ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Talking Points of our Pan-African channel. Wish you a happy National Day. Today, May 20th, 2024, like every other year, Cameroon commemorates its 52nd edition of national unity. Of course, the theme of this year's celebration is Army and Nation Together for a United, Peaceful and Prosperous Cameroon. Since instituted by the former President Amadou Ahidjo in 1972, when Cameroonians voted in a referendum against or for a unitary state against the federal system, the nation has celebrated unity on this day. Cameroon's unity celebration each year amidst a socio-political crisis rocking the two English-speaking regions of the country has raised concerns around national unity. Join us as we evaluate today's or Cameroon's over 50 years of national unity with our panel of guests. Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome on board. Stay with us. If you're just joining us, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on the first dose of your weekly program, Talking Point over For You Media Africa. But today we're picking interest in our opening topic for today, of course, national unity in Cameroon. Today, the country commemorates its 52nd edition of national unity. Like every other day, Cameroonians celebrate this day. And of course, the theme, like we mentioned in our preamble centers around the army and the nation, togetherness for a prosperous nation. Okay, like earlier on mentioned, we have a panel of guests, and first we are being joined by Hilary Tita Tabit, who is a political analyst. Greetings to you, sir. Thank you for joining us. Greetings, Mr. Hilary. Are you with us? Good afternoon. If yes, please kindly unmute your mic.
Oh, thank you so much, Sharon. It's a pleasure to honor your invitation, and I hope to have a productive share with my co-panelists here present on matters that are concerned or that are very pertinent to Cameroon and the continent of Africa as a whole. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. While we await the remaining guests, of course, I'll proceed with you, and I'll kickstart, of course, with this pertinent topic on this very pertinent question. What's your evaluation of Cameroon's unity since 1972?
It's been a journey of thick and thin, and I would like, first of all, to look at what are we unifying? What is the focus of the celebrating the Unitary Day? Is it the diversities of the Cameroonians before pre-colonialism? Is it the colonial legacies we inherited from the colonizers from the West? What are we unifying? Which people are we unifying? Because it's been unfortunate that we focus so much on the colonial legacies of the English and French culture, and then we forget to equally look at pay much attention to the different diversities in terms of culture and language of the indigenous Cameroonians. And because we fail to focus on that and to see how we can actually talk of unity from that perspective, we kind of debate on a topic that is kind of hanging because we focus so much on the colonial legacies, which is not our heritage. So I think the journey of unity has been that of thick and thin, because today we have hate speech among Cameroonians. There is one that identify themselves as Bulu. There is another that identify themselves as Beti, Bamelike, and so on. And so that unity from the Cameroon origin, the Cameroonian origin, is not there. And today we focus so much on the French and the English legacies, which of course is not working well due to the poor governance or mismanagement of the administrative machinery of the state. So I think that the unitary since 1972, if I have to judge by the results today, I would say that not much effort has been put in place to make sure that Cameroonians all feel Cameroon, all belong to Cameroon, because there is division even in the aspect of politics and in every aspect, which we have to actually look into it. Thank you so much.
Maria Tita, for your brilliant preamble. We've just been joined by Dr. Barrister ASONG Michael Kumau, who is, of course, an independent presidential candidate, and, of course, a medical doctor, doubles as a lawyer. Greetings to you, sir.
Greetings, Madam Jigs, and greetings to all our viewers.
Thank you for joining us. And we're equally been joined by Engineer Elvis Banner, Secretary General for the Popular Actions Party and political analyst. Greetings to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Sharon. Good afternoon to my co-panelists. I hope my background here doesn't disturb with noise. I am actually not in the office, so I just try to catch up with the program. I hope to be up to standards today. Thank you.
Invitation, like I earlier on started with Hilary Tita, I'd like to get your opinion. Dr. Hassan, and now given we're over 50 years of national unity since 1972 in Cameroon, and today it happens to be a day where Cameroonians came out to celebrate what we call unity in the country. So how do you evaluate this process, or this process that has taken place over the past 50 years?
Well, I want to say thank you for that question. I think it will be appropriate for me to, first of all, recall some historical facts. I think every Cameroonian should know why we celebrate the 20th of May. And this is because on the 20th of May, 1972, a referendum was being held in Cameroon. And this referendum was being organized by the President Amadou Ahidjo to actually request from the population to vote for a unitary state. I would like to say that President Amadou Ahidjo was a Pan-Africanist. And when you look at our constitution, the Constitution of Cameroon of 1972, and its amendments of 2008, 2096 and 2008, you realize that in our preamble, it is well stated that the Cameroon people are convinced that that the African society can only be liberated if it is being united in all solidarity. So Amadou Ahidjo, certainly in his vision and his way of looking at things, wanted a united Cameroon, and certainly after, he also envisaged a united Africa. So I think it is in that mindset that President Amadou Ahidjo, who at the time was the president of the Federal Republic of Cameroon, decided to call upon his fellow Cameroonian brothers and sisters of the Southern Cameroons, who was at the time a federal state on its own, with the prime minister at the time, I think, was Joa, and Jongu Foncha was the vice president of the Federal Republic of Cameroon. So I think the FUNBAN conference was being held, and it's during that FUNBAN conference that it was being decided whether they should go forward in some sort of united and unitary state. So on the 20th of May, as I earlier on said, 1972, a referendum was being conducted in Cameroon. Absolutely. And there was a majority vote that actually expressed the nation's will to form a unitary state. Now, is worth also mentioning that the foundations of the unitary states were, quote unquote, being influenced by certain vices. And we can say today that even though we have a unitary state today, at that moment, we have so many years where it was being held that those of the southern Cameroons were being forced to actually accept a unitary state. We heard of cases of elections which were being frauded. But nevertheless, we find ourselves today in a unitary state, and for over 50 years, today I think we are at 52 years.
Yes.
Exactly. We have been living in peace. We have been living in harmony. Both Anglophones and Francophones have been living in harmony, despite the fact that, as I earlier on said, that might be the referendum was being marked by certain fraud, which some people say, but those things have not been confirmed because there is no proof. But nevertheless, what is important is what we are having today in Cameroon. And when you look at things, you realize that from 1972, we realize that there was a degradation of our national development. You realize that from 1972, when the federal state was being put to an end, we lost so many things. So many companies got crashed in the Anglophone regions, like in the Francophone regions, because the mindset was to bring everything together in a unitary state. And we shall also see that from also a cultural point of view, so many things were being lost. We had so many Anglophones who started complaining about the fact that there's some sort of discrimination and marginalization. We even had lawyers who had to even go onto the streets to actually strike because they were complaining of the Ohara text, which is actually a commercial law text, which is being practiced in Western Africa and most especially in French-speaking colonial nations. And the translations were not properly done because it's worth mentioning that the Southern Cameroons has a British culture, a common law culture. And you know, sometimes the culture which we have this way is the French culture. It's not the same legal type of system. So it's a civil law system that is used this way, or droit civil. And in the Anglophone regions is the common law. So there are a lot of differences between these two legal systems. And you know, sometimes translating certain texts becomes very difficult and practice too. So I think the lawyers were kicking against, not about the practice, because when it concerns practice, these laws were harmonized and they were actually being unanimously accepted by most lawyers, either be it on the French or the Anglophone sides. But there were issues on translation which were blatant, and you know, the lawyers had to kick against that because they felt, and for some time now Anglophones have been feeling that it's like they are being assimilated. They want to, the French-speaking side wants to colonize them once more, change their cultures, they change their way of thinking, and impose the French type of ideology upon them. So it went no, and what we had today is the Anglophone crisis. The Anglophone crisis is actually one of the failures of the unitary state. That means the fact that we have the Anglophone crisis today is just the proof that ab initio there was an issue with this unitary state. And even though from the very start, as I earlier on said, the goal for AIJO was to unite everybody, not only Cameroonians, but also Africans. As I clearly stated, it is in our constitution. If we go read the second paragraph of our preamble, you'll realize that Cameroonians have a Pan-African mindset, and our forefathers also did, our founding fathers also did. So this said, we are going to realize that today the results, or what we can conclude about unitary today, is that it is very questionable. Questionable because of the fact that we still have the Anglophone crisis today. We are still losing our brothers and sisters, be it in the military, be it civilians in the southwest and the northwest. We are still having many people displaced today into different regions from the southwest and northwest, going towards French regions or going towards Nigeria. Today we are having many youths thinking that there's no hope in Cameroon, and they have to move out and go to other countries like Canada, America, and Europe. We still have issues today for all Cameroonians seeking access to health, because health is still something which is inaccessible for many Cameroonians. We have women today who are crying on violence being committed towards them, whether it be physical violence, economic violence, mental violence, psychological violence, religious violence, which are being committed upon women. We have no roads. The cost of living is very, very high. We have unemployment. And you see, when you look at all of these things, we realize that the aim of celebrating this day was actually to elevate and to remind ourselves of the hard work which all Cameroonians are, and actually look at what we have done in 50 years and celebrate those things. But when you look at the political environment today, when you look at our social environment today, we'll realize that most of these results are negative. Not to say that there are not some positive things, but if we want to take a global aperçu of what is happening today, we'll realize that it is negative. And if it is negative, then what are we then celebrating today? What are we really sitting down to celebrate? At the end of the day, this celebration has become a celebration of the military. That's wrong. It's not a day for the military to glorify themselves, but this day was a day that was chosen by our founding fathers to remind us that we are one nation, to remind us that we are one culture, whether be it Francophone or Anglophone, English-speaking or French-speaking, we all have the same ethnic roots.
Above all, united.
Above all, united. Whether it be the Bantus, the Semi-Bantus, we find them in all regions in Cameroon, whether it be Anglophone regions or Francophone regions. Awuzas, the same thing. So we are to be reminded of the fact that we are united, and that this unity has as goal to prosper development and to remind us that we have to move forward. But unfortunately, that is not what we have today.
Okay, so sorry to cut you short. I'll be coming back to you. You mentioned the idea of challenges, some of the loopholes to the referendum or the unitary state which Cameroon has. Back to you, Mr. Engineer Elvis Bane. We earlier on mentioned your political analyst. You listen to your co-panelists all through their own insightful contributions on the program. But then this idea of Cameroon's unity in recent years has faced challenges, which according to Dr. ASONG, it's something that's a reality on the ground. We have the Anglophone crisis that debuted in 2016. Aside the major national dialogue, which was brought forth in a bid to quell this tension, for instance, what other avenues could be exploited for Cameroon to be able to enjoy sustainable peace and stability?
Well, Sharon, I have listened to my co-panelists speak, and I must begin by saying that we cannot talk of national unity nowadays and even go as far as claiming that there is peace in this country, because we know what is happening in the country, especially in the northwest and southwest regions. If we were talking about destabilization only, maybe in the northern parts of the country or in the east with Seleka, we would understand that we are talking about external attacks. But from the northwest and the southwest, we know exactly why these regions are in turmoil, and we know that it is as a consequence, it's a fruit of the unconstitutionality of what happened in 1972, which was only a continuation of what had started since 1961. So I really do not think that when we talk about national unity, it is a day to be celebrated, because already first, it is a day that was based on falsehood, and like I say, it was a day that was unconstitutional, because even what happened in 1972 was some sort of a constitutional coup d'etat. You see, now asking what we need to do to consolidate peace in our country, I will simply tell you audience that the first thing we need to do is to go back to 1961 and find out what went wrong at that time, to go back to 1972 and correct the errors. Because I listened to Doctor and he said something like President Ayijo had in mind to create a united Cameroon and bring together people and eventually maybe go towards a united Africa. It is a good idea, it is a good vision, but it is not because you have good intentions that you do things undemocratically, that you do things unconstitutionally. Because like I said, it was a constitutional coup, and we cannot as a people build a foundation on our nation on a foundation of falsehood and want to think that we can continue from that premise. And like I always like to remind, Cameroon today seems to be in a unity because some people are forced into it at gunpoint today when we look at what is happening in the northwest and the southwest regions. So let's even not talk about the grand national dialogue, because to me it was a farce, it was a failure. I always insist, let us go back to 1961 and do things the way it was supposed to be done. I want to think that Doctor, for instance, is a legal mind and he understands perfectly what Article 47 of the Federal Constitution stated. The idea here was that the spirit of that article was to protect the integrity of the state, which was already a united one. In that federalism, the spirit was also, should I say, to protect the minority rights, who were the people from the southern Cameroons. But you realize that President Amadou Ahidjo, knowing fully well that going through the constitution, going through the parliament, he was never going to achieve what he did in 72. He decided to use his high powers, to use his high office and decree, you see, convening Cameroonians for a referendum. And believe you me, in 1961, the Southern Cameroonians were the lone persons who voted either to join or not to join. And they voted, of course, to join their brothers east of the Mungo. I want to think that if there was a need for another voting to find out if we were to remain in that state of a federation or to go to a unitary state, it was again the place of the Southern Cameroonians to be consulted to vote. And this time around, not a national something, knowing fully well that by virtue of population, demographic distribution, even if all the Southern Cameroonians voted 100% to stay in a federation, and that the East Cameroonians voted for a unitary state, the votes in the east of Cameroon were still going to carry the day because they have the majority in terms of population. So I say it was a constitutional coup d'etat, and we cannot pretend that the day we are celebrating today is historical. We cannot pretend that it is founded. We cannot pretend that everybody finds solace under it, because like I say, some people have been complaining even since 1961 till when the case became worsened from 1972. People have been complaining, posing problems, posing questions, but the regime in place has decided never to take all of this into consideration. And of course, we find ourselves where we are today, and I find it difficult to accept or hear someone say we have been living in peace. It's true. Sometimes the absence of war does not necessarily mean that we are in peace. But as of 2016 till now, it is close to 8 years that we have been living in war, and thousands upon thousands of people have died, thousands have been displaced, thousands have lost their property, all because of the errors of 1972, which were intended to satisfy the interest of an individual and not to express the will of the people. So, madam, I really want to think that 20th of May in this country is not the Unity Day. When we talk about Unity Day, 1261, that is the day two independent entities came together, and that is when they united. You see, that is the day we are supposed to be celebrating this country. They give us the impression that anything to do with the Southern Cameroonians, they do everything possible to clean it away, to wipe it off, and then they impose on us other issues, other dates that we find it difficult to identify ourselves with, and that is what they want the people to begin to celebrate. Let us just go back. If we can begin to give ourselves genuine answers as to why there is a war today wreaking havoc in the Southern Cameroons, then I want to believe you me, if we want to get those answers genuinely, then we shall need to go back to our history and begin to correct all the errors, and part of these errors have to do with the 1972
Mr. Engineer Elvis, are you still with us? Hopefully, we're going to get back to you. Let's proceed back with you, or Hilary Chita. You listened to your co-panelists and their various points of views. Now, looking at the theme of this year's celebration, Army and the Nation Together for a United, Peaceful and Prosperous Cameroon. It's quite a very pregnant theme, given that he has a lot embedded in it. Now, as a political analyst, what do you understand from this year's theme?
Well, Sharon, I will start by saying that the army is just one of the actors that will consolidate peace, or that will preserve the peace of the nation, and equally provide that enabling environment for development and growth. But the most important are the political actors. I always say that policies are 95% political and just 5% action. Meaning that if the politicians don't conceive the right policies, even those that will want to implement will not be able to implement policies that will be for the benefit of the state. And I want to just borrow from my co-panelists as well, and to talk that the issues of Cameroon, from my perspective, is not, it could just be partially historical issues, but it is the issues of governance, because the same complaints those from the Northwest and Southwest regions give are same complaints that those from the far North, the South, they complain as well. They don't have the social amenities that they were supposed to have. They don't, the high cost of living equally affects them. So the issue we have in Cameroon is the governance problem, non-respect of state institutions. History may play a role, but I think what is more crucial to Cameroon today is readdressing the governance structure of Cameroon. Looking at the theme of today, I earlier said that the army alone, if we are celebrating the army alone so that they can help us grow or develop as a nation, then I think we have misplaced our priority. And I want to add my voice to that of Mr. Njine Elvis by saying that for growth and development to take place, we must equally look at the individuals of the nation. Do they have access to the basic needs that they need to survive as a Cameroonian? Do they have access to the adequate security that they will be able to operate their own activities within the nation without being threatened? I don't think the army, celebrating just the army today, is that much important than the individual Cameroonians. Those who started the crisis in the Northwest, the armed conflict in the Northwest and Southwest regions, were not trained armies. These are individuals that were fed up, and they were able to, they were capable enough to take the laws into their hands and pick up arms, and then they start fighting the state. This is to tell you how much, how far a citizen or an individual can go. Jean-Jacques Rousseau said that every human being was born rebel. They are only being constrained by institutions. And so when the institutions fail, it becomes difficult now to control those human beings. I think, to me, I will be celebrating the army, but I will prefer that we celebrate much the Cameroonian. We celebrate much an individual Cameroonian, irrespective of their ethnicity, irrespective of their cultural background. And if we cannot celebrate such, then there is a problem with celebrating unity in Cameroon.
Thank you so much. Like you mentioned, it's all about celebrating Cameroonians irrespective of their tribes, irrespective of their ethnic background, language, and a host of others. And now, Dr. ASONG, you listen to Mr. Hilary Chita, you got his own point of view. Now, given that there are so many challenges, but like he reiterated and Mr. Njine shared the same opinion, it's a time for Cameroonians to get back to the past and see what went wrong in a bid for them to correct their future moves. Given that Cameroon is headed towards a prosperous future, as if it aligns with the theme, like you mentioned, Cameroonians may have made mistakes in the past, but we're 50 years on, and there's still a lot to learn from it when we're trying to correct our future. Now, what is the way ahead for Cameroon?
Well, what I would like to say is that we can't really talk about peace today. As my predecessors said, we can't talk about prosperity. And, you know, it is worth talking about history and looking for the root causes of everything we have today, because if we don't have an idea of our history and we don't know all what happened in the past, then it will be difficult for us today to understand our present, to understand why we are having the issues we're having today, and to seek sustainable solutions. You know, I, for one, my candidacy in the next presidential elections is based on rewriting the history of Cameroon. And that constitutes one of my slogans. And why do I talk about rewriting the history of Cameroon? It is because I realized that when you go back to our history, the youth today and most Cameroonians don't know what happened in the past, have no idea of the different reasons and the reasons behind the ideas and the philosophies of our founding fathers. And you know, if we don't understand our past, automatically we won't be able to secure our present and make sure that our future is better. So, this said, what can I say about our future and heading towards prosperity? The only way around this is for every Cameroonian to be able to see his or herself as a leader. A leader is one who sought to resolve issues in a society. And today, I think all Cameroonians, in one way or the other, are affected by the poor governance which we are all experiencing today. And as I earlier on mentioned, we have so many issues. And the only way we can resolve these issues is that we must see ourselves as leaders. Each and every citizen come together, take our civic responsibilities at hand, and make sure that in the next elections, we are able to vote the rightful candidate who will be able to resolve each and every problem. You know, if we want to move forward, then we must correct the mistakes of the past. And as my co-panelist, Mr. Njini, earlier on said, we must go back to the past and correct every single error that was being made. I think one of the most prosperous moments or periods in the existence of Cameroon as a nation was between 1961 to 1972, when we had a federal state. We never heard of any problems. Each federal state managed its own affairs, conducted its own activities in the strict respect of its cultural background, linguistic background, and its desire for a better nation and a better Cameroon. And during that period, everything was okay. Everything was marvelous, and we had a Cameroon that could even give loans and aid to foreign countries in Asia, in Africa, and that is what we are seeking today. But unfortunately, the
Cameroon of today is not the same that used to be in the past.
Of course. So, and that happened after this unitary state. So, everything around the unity state must be questioned. I think it's not a matter of the state being a unitary state or it being a federal state, but I think, as my other co-panelists said, it's a matter of governance, because there are so many countries out there practicing a unitary state and everything is going on perfectly well. Others practicing federalism and everything is going on perfectly well. But I think that if our leaders were able to bring Cameroonians together, explain the reasons why they are searching for a unitary state, and put the different mechanisms in place where there will be true justice for every Cameroonian, then I certainly believe that even in a unitary state today, we would have been prospering. But unfortunately, this type of state has concentrated powers on certain individuals who have decided to take hostage the country. And that is what we are facing today. So even if we have to continue in a unitary state, the mindset will have to be changed. We have to be that where there should be separation of powers. There should be strong institutions. They should be able to share powers with every other person, and people should be autonomous. And I think that was given possibility through what we call today decentralization, even though it is not perfectly practiced. But nevertheless, we could still go back to federalism to see how we could resolve our personal issues. And that should be something that should be proposed to the nation. You know, our constitution is very clear that sovereignty belongs to the people and it is exercised by the executive. But unfortunately, what we have here is sovereignty belonging to the executive and exercised by the executive to the detriment of the population. So we have to change that paradigm. We have to bring back the population into the affairs of our nation. And that is why I sought for a governance for the people and by the people. So that's the only way we can make things move better, coming together, going back to the past and correcting all of these errors. And that's why we need to rewrite the history of our nation, Cameroon.
Thank you so much, Dr. Barrister ASONG. Now we got indications that we have Mr. Engineer is back with us. You listen to your co-panelists a bit to crown up today's opening topic. Now, what is your own idea? Do you share the same perspective as Mr. Dr. ASONG?
Well, madam, it's not just about sharing ideas or views, but I really want to say here that like the other co-panelists, I think Hillary said, you see, we should stop trying to play the game that the regime in Yaoundé has been playing by trying to limit the southern Cameroonians to a region within the Republic of Cameroon. Because you will realize that we are talking about national unity, which to me, I still insist that it doesn't exist because it was built on a foundation of falsehood. You will notice that in 1972, when they modified the constitution, they scraped off the other party that came into that union in 1961, that is the Southern Cameroon or West Cameroonians, you see, and that is just what has been happening. They have left from an equal state that came into alliance with another or into a union with another in 1961, 1972, that other part of that one other party, that is the Southern Cameroonians, were kept off the constitution, and today we have been reduced from just to provinces and then regions within the Republic of Cameroon, whereas we came into the union as an equal party with East Cameroon. So it is not a matter of saying that because people have issues in the Northwest and people have the same issues in the West, it means that it is the same situation. No, we are a state that came to with them, and like I say, that is why you realize that when we talk about crisis today, we have them in the Northwest and the Southwest, but not in other regions. Why? Because the people of West Cameroon are still very much conscious as to what they agreed to get into in 1961 when they were going to Fumban to agree on whatever thing. Their intentions were clear. They were going in for a federal state. They were not going in to become a region within the Republic of Cameroon. And like I earlier mentioned, you will realize that from 1961 right up to 72 until present date, everything was technically done, you see, to, like Mr. Pierre himself said it in France, the idea was to assimilate Southern Cameroonians, reduce them from a state to just either a region or a province or whatever thing. And of course, that is why you find those particular two regions today in the state that they are today. So if you may just remind me of your question, you were asking if I agree with Dr. ASONG. Madam, I will still say that when we talk about unity today with respect to today's theme, I will say if everything were to be done normally as it is supposed to be done, we will say that Cameroon today should have been celebrating its 63rd anniversary, and that should be on the 1st of October every year and not on the 20th of May. You know, like we say,
Mr. Engineer, are you still with us?
yes, can you get me?
Yes, we can. Please kindly proceed. Just in a few words so we can wrap up this opening topic.
Hello? Can you get me, please?
Yes, please proceed, Mr. Engineer.
Can you get me?
Yes, we can get you 5 on 5. Mr. Engineer, hopefully we're going to get back to you, but then it's time for us to take our main topic for today, which will be taking us to the Democratic Republic of Congo. Hopefully we shall be coming back to Cameroon in our subsequent editions in a bit to analyze or fully exhaust this very pertinent topic to the Cameroonian people. Of course, Sunday, there has been a fourth coup attempt in Kinshasa, capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The attack on Sunday morning was repelled by the army in that part of the African continent. According to the DRC Army spokesperson Ekenge Sylvain, who addressed the nation via televised address, it involved Congolese and foreign fighters. Local media reported in that part of Africa that those involved were linked to the self-exiled opposition leader Christian Malanga, who later posted a video on Facebook threatening President Felix Antoine Tshisekedi. Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, we take a brief break before we get on to unpacking today's topic of discussion. Unfortunately, since we can get the break, we shall, like we mentioned in our opening topic, we've been joined by Hilary Tita Tebit, who is a political analyst, Dr. Barrister Asong Michael, who is an independent presidential candidate for 2025 presidential elections. He's equally a lawyer and a doctor. We've equally been joined by Mr. Engineer Vesban, a political analyst and the Secretary General for the Popular Actions Party. Before we get down to discussions on this topic and the Democratic Republic of Congo, we shall welcome this report done for us by the news desk of 4U Media Africa. The Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC's armed forces have repelled an attempted coup in the African nation involving Congolese and foreign fighters on Sunday morning, a DRC army spokesperson said in a televised address. An attempted coup data has been put down by the defense and security forces in the country, with perpetrators arrested, said the spokesperson, Sylvain Ekenge. The shootout left 3 people dead in the capital, Kinshasa. At first, local media identified the armed men as DRC soldiers, but then reported they were linked to self-exiled opposition leader Christian Malanga, who later posted a video on Facebook threatening President Felix Tshisekedi. Tshisekedi was re-elected as president in December 2023 in a chaotic vote that made calls for a revolt from the opposition over what they said was a lack of transparency. The Central African country has witnessed similar trends of disputed elections in the past. These schemes admit a crisis gripping Tshisekedi'S ruling party over an election for the parliament's leadership, which was supposed to be held on Saturday but got postponed. It is worthy of note that 2 years ago the army fought an attempted coup in the Central African nation. Well, you heard it, we're now discussing the Democratic Republic of Congo in the course of this program. Meanwhile, it should be reiterated that this coup came some hours, and then earlier this morning there was another coup attempt in the Central African Republic. We shall be unpacking these with our guests, our panel of guests this afternoon. Now, since I was with Mr. Engineer Elvis Bane, I would like to take up from there with you. Now, what accounts for this recent or trend of coups across the African continent? Mr. Engineer, are you with us? If Mr. Engineer Elvis is not with us, I'll channel that question to Hilary Tita. What accounts for the recent rise in coups across the African continent?
If I have to put the response in one word, I would say political mobilization. And another, ignorant optimism. You know, most coup d'etat always been justified with the fact that elections that were recently conducted were rigged. And the fundamental question has always been, which country in the world doesn't face election contestations? But then should it go to the extent of coup d'etat? Personally, I am never of the opinion that coup d'etat is the best option to get into power, because power that is seized will equally need someone to seize that same power. It is difficult to transit from democratic means of getting power to transit from a military way of getting power to democratic way of getting power. So I will never even encourage coup d'etat. I think the coup d'etat that are occurring in the Central Africa so far, or the attempted coup d'etat, are simply from the influence that we see from the West African bloc. The successes they record in their coup d'etat probably motivate those in the Central African bloc to actually engage in such activity, which personally I will never encourage. I think democracy is a better form of governance. Let power be democratically gotten, not through coup d'etat or arms.
Thank you so much, Hilary, for that response. Proceeding with you, Dr. Asong. Now, this is the second coup since 2 years against Felix Antoine Tshisekedi, but it's the first since he was re-elected as president in on December 20, 2023. Now, could we say that his rule is under attack?
Yeah, of course. I think not only his rule, but the rule of every other African president is under attack. You know, in Africa today, we have serious political crises, which actually finds themselves embedded in the issues of very poor governance. You know, where the President Felix Tshisekedi took over power, from the time he took over power till date, we have actually realized that he has had a lot of issues resolving the different problems which the Congolese face on a daily basis. And you know, one of those issues that President Felix has actually encountered are the crises that are actually being orchestrated in the eastern regions of the DRC. And you know, DRC has always been a country that has known a lot of political instability and coups. From the time that Patrice Lumumba was killed, and that Mobutu actually took over power and who actually ruled in a dictatorship. Later on, him being outcasted by Kabila, who later on his son took over, and there have been these conflicts over and over and over. And you see, due to this political path which Congo has taken, it actually shows that the fundamental issues that affect their political system has not been resolved. You know, a country that has been used to coups will always have a scar on it, and actually this scar can actually give a room for other people to decide to try to seize power once more through the same manner. You know, that's why my previous co-panelists earlier on said that coup d'etats are not the best way in getting power. Even though Tshisekedi took over power legitimately through a democratic process, but you realize that he has been facing a lot of issues, and his manner of governance in quotes, has been a one which is more based on some sort of violence, which is based on trying to dictate what he actually wants. And that's what we are seeing today. Even in the crisis in the eastern regions, instead to seek for pacific methods of resolutions, he instead decides to point fingers on Rwanda and has even threatened Rwanda to go for a war. You know, when you threaten another neighboring nation that is also known to have had those type of circumstances where you had wars, you had genocides, you know, you bring back into memory so many trauma. And when you do that, automatically you have so many opponents in your country, and they are just waiting for that. They are just waiting to seize the opportunity on one funny thing that you do, or if you don't govern very well, to decide that no, they too are coming to take over power. In fact, they are looking for some sort of legitimacy in their actions. And you know, unfortunately, since Felix Tshisekedi took over power, there has been unrest in the DRC. We have had the M23 crisis and a lot of crises that have taken place in the eastern regions of DRC. We have had humanitarian crisis and all the like. So all of these things actually affect the whole political system of the DRC. And I certainly believe that due to that, things are becoming more and more difficult in the DRC. And even though he won, he probably won because he's expressing the mind of the people. But then there is this minority who he has not yet made peace with them. And that is the main political problem which all our different African nations face, is that when somebody takes over power, he wants to consider opposition as an enemy. And when he does that and he does not bring the opposition on the table, or decides to reconcile the whole nation and bring peace, automatically those who are being in one way or the other marginalized or discriminated from the political scene will feel that they too have a right to take over, even though they are a minority, but they feel that they can do something to destabilize the country and actually have access to power. So I think that there should be separation of power. I think that power should be shared. And I think that presidents today in Africa should rethink their political strategies and to integrate everybody in the political scene so that we should be able to move together. It's only in Africa where we see opposition being a real threat. When you look at European countries, you look at America, you realize that opposition is actually a big hand in the construction and development of a country. So you need opposition to work hand in hand with those in government, to criticize those in government, and that will actually stimulate growth, will stimulate more competition. It will help those who are in power to be able to carry and take the right decisions. If not, they will be criticized. So I think that is the problem DRC is facing today, and that is why we are having these repetitions of coups, not only in the DRC, but in other countries in Africa.
Thank you for your contribution. And now, Hilary Chita, you listen to Dr. Asong. The nation held elections in December, one that sparked uncertainty across the Central African nation. But like Dr. Asong says, he says that they should be able to bring about the president, Felix Antoine Tshisekedi, should be able to look at a pacific way of resolving the issues plaguing his country. Look at the crisis plaguing the eastern region or eastern province of the Democratic Republic of Congo. With that in mind, could the country, or could this insecurity that is affecting the eastern part of the DRC could have been one that could have sparked these outbursts, this attempted coup d'etat in the nation?
I think that the African continent as a whole, or most African countries, have a whole historical complexity that makes governance very difficult. If we may have to look at those that even had to be revolutionary in their governance, like Robert Mugabe, Gaddafi, Muammar Gaddafi, you find out that they were mostly dictators. At some point, there is time to bring out a very strong ideology that will be able to push forth the growth of your country. And at one point, you need diplomacy and democracy. I want to think that somehow Africans don't actually give their presidents that time to actually implement that which they have. It is good to have the opposition political parties for diverse perspectives. But then when the opposition political parties only stand at a point where they criticize without laying down productive measures or productive alternatives, it becomes a problem. The crisis in Congo, if we want to just cut across what Congo DRC has gone through, DRC was a free land after the Berlin West African Conference, sorry. It was given into the hands of King Leopold of Belgium, and later on, it became the colony of Belgium. And after independence, it became a land where, since from the legacy they had that a country was given to a single king, it means that capitalists could rule that country. And that is why even the rebels from Rwanda could find that opportunity to get into Congo and secure their own share of the cake. So you now find out that it becomes difficult for the Congolese president, Felix Tshisekedi, to actually rule the country if oppositions are not there to support him. The crisis in the eastern part of Congo actually could actually contribute to that. But then that is just what some other African countries face. Influence either from external bodies out of the African continent or within. But then that is international politics. And I will equally buy from the perspective which Dr. said, sometimes you need to use pacific measures to solve problems instead of threatening other states, which somehow can measure up to you or can even be more powerful than you. Thank you.
Thank you too. Over to you, Dr. ASONG. And now you listen to Hillary's point of view. Speaking of the crisis, you earlier on mentioned of a pacific way to resolving what's plaguing the eastern province of the Democratic Republic of Congo. In that regard, you share the opinion that dialogue could actually bring an end to the eastern crisis?
Of course, you know, according to Article 33 of the UN Charter of 1945, you know, the UN actually encourages pacific settlement of resolutions, and it is quite specific on the different manners which can be used, whether it be conciliation, mediation, dialogue, and all the like. And from my own point of view, I strongly believe that the only way out in resolving any conflict or dispute in Africa is actually through a pacific dispute resolution mechanism. And we have seen that work in certain countries in Africa, which we could use as examples. For example, when you look at the conflict in Ethiopia, Tigray, that means between the Federal Republic of Ethiopia and the forces of Tigray. At the end of the day, what actually brought peace and stability in Ethiopia was dialogue, and this dialogue was being held, I think, in South Africa, yes. And it was being conducted by former President Olusegun Obasanjo and Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya, and we actually saw the fruits. And today we can at least talk of some sort of peace and stability in Ethiopia. So I strongly believe that that's the only way out in also resolving this issue we are having in the eastern regions of DRC, is for all the parties to come together, sit together, and look at what is important. What is important is our unity. What is important is peace. What is important is that we join hands together and move forward. You know, the unfortunate thing about Africa is that we have a continent which was, in quotes, designed and created by our colonial masters. Because when you look at Africa today, the different demographic repartitions of countries actually have a lot of faults, in the sense that when you come to a country and you realize that on both sides of certain countries you have the same ethnic groups, then it's already a problem. When you look at Togo today and you look at Nigeria, but you realize that you have Yorubas in those countries and at the same time in Nigeria. And when you go to the eastern province of DRC, you realize the same thing. You realize that you find some Rwandans there who were even there before colonial times. So when you look at all those things, you realize that our continent and our different African nations were poorly structured by those who drafted it. And that is why we are having all the conflicts today, because the DRC claims those who are there are Rwandans. And the Rwandans who are there said, but we were here before independence. So you cannot claim that this land does not also belong to us, because our forefathers were on this land. And you know, this is one of the issues we have with our colonial masters, is that they left Africa in a state of confusion. And that is why today we are having identity crisis. We don't know where we are from. We are fighting against ourselves, even though we are all brothers and sisters having the same origin and having the same blood. So those are the things we are facing today. And I think it's time for us Africans to be able to recognize the fact that we are all Africans, and that we are all brothers and sisters, and that there is no problem that we cannot resolve. As His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo said, he said, to African problems, African solutions. So that is what we need to do today. We don't need any foreign intervention to resolve our own issues, but we need to sit on the table. And before sitting on the table, we must always remember that we are first of all Africans, having the same blood, having the same origins, and that we have to know that we shouldn't be fighting against each other. And that if we can put down our differences and look at one thing which is important for us, African unity, then of course we'll be able to put in place and bring in political stability and peace that will lead to the end of all the crises we are facing today. It will stop all these crimes against humanity, humanitarian crisis, and will actually prompt development, because what we are having today in Africa is division and not unity, whereas we need unity to be able to bring forth a more prosperous continent.
Actually, I'll be coming back to you to capitalize on what you just said, but then let me get Prof. Hilary Tita. Now, given your point of view, you earlier on cited that coups are not good for the African continent. Now, do you believe that governance systems and the policies that are already existing on the continent of Africa could be one that is affiliated to this rise in coups across Africa, across the continent?
Yes, I think the governance systems are the issue, and that is the point I kept on reiterating on from the very first beginning when we were handling the first topic. The issues we have in Africa are strong men in strong institutions and leaders who are not visionary and who do not have the interests of the people at heart. They work so much for themselves. It's more of politics of the stomach, and you have the population as well playing the same politics. Today, if someone like Dr. in the house today wants to become president, how many of the youths out there will buy his vision of creating a Cameroon that will be developed by 2035? How many Cameroonians will forego a token of 10,000 francs from a wealthy politician to buy a vision that will prosper the nation? So you see, it's an issue, a systematic problem that everyone has a corporate responsibility and everyone has a corporate blame to take as well. The governance system is not the best. Well, I stood against coup d'etat initially because I believe that even if the governance systems are not the best, we can as well sit down and then draft out a constitution that will permit us to grow. We can only do that when the population or Africans understand that the plight of Africa lies in their hands, that they are the ones they've been waiting for. They are the ones to create the change that they want. Permit me drift a little. We are preparing for presidential elections in Cameroon come 2025. If you ask the question, or you ask a youth on the street, have you registered in order to be eligible to vote? They will say no, yet they need change. If you do not play your responsibility as a population, as an individual within a state, how do you expect that change to come? You vote the politicians then make the law. So if you have wrong politicians, it means you voted the wrong politicians. And if you fail to vote, then you allow wrong people to vote the wrong politicians. If the politicians create a system that consolidates them in power, it is because we have given them that opportunity to. My experience in Cameroon so far is that most Cameroonians are very passive as far as political issues are concerned. Politics determines whether you eat or not, determines the kind of clothes you wear. And if we become so passive and we keep complaining that the system is bad, we make part of the system. To change the system, we must equally play our role such that the system can be amended and then make the good one we want. I think that coup d'etats, I still stand for the fact that coup d'etats are not the best. Let's always resolve our problems in a diplomatic manner. And even if the institutions are as bad, there are still provisions for the civilian population to actually take part in the development, either just simply voting the politician. So I think that the systems may be bad, or they may be good. We just have poor, bad individuals managing the governance system, or the systems may be bad, but we have the opportunity to change them.
Well, we're gradually, thank you so much. While we're gradually coming to the end of this program, earlier on, Dr. ASONG, you earlier on mentioned that all this will have an impact on regional stability. But then, linking it with what I asked your co-panelists, can we have a continent that is void of coups in Africa? And is there a feasibility that all this, what impact would it possibly have on regional stability?
Well, I strongly believe that nothing is impossible. I think all things are possible. I am a Christian, so I obviously believe that nothing is impossible. And I think that what we should strive for every day is peace. And that's why they say happy are those who seek peace and who actually encourage peace. And I think that that's what we all should be encouraging today in Africa. I strongly believe that it's not impossible, and that it requires every African to change their mindset, because that's the issue we are having today. We have some sort of identity crisis, and most Africans don't know who they are. They are unsure, they are not confident, they are not bold enough, and they always require that others should take decisions for them. And I think that we must put an end to that. And the only way to put an end to that is for us reminding ourselves that we are able and we are capable to take over. And I think that everything was set clear from the time we got our independence, because our independence was being gotten. It actually revealed the fact that we Africans now are able to do things on our own, even though this independence, in quote, was being imposed by our colonial masters in their own manner. But nevertheless, due to the fact that we have our independence today, we must be conscious of that fact that we are able to build our country, develop our country, bring peace and stability in our own manner. Unfortunately, what we have today is that most African presidents had decided to continue in the manner of our colonial masters, and that's where the neo-colonialism type of thing got into place, and it has actually slowed down development in Africa today. And the few Africans who are doing very well are being, in one way or the other, picked up from these African countries to go there and do extraordinary things. So I think that we Africans will have to start by changing our mindset. If we're able to change our mindset and to actually seek the development of our continent, which is the richest continent on planet, then I think that we'll be able to bring together our knowledge, bring together our resources, bring together our know-how and our intelligence, and we'll be able to create a more stable society. So when we talk about regional security, regional stability, of course, that will only be dependent on the way Africans see themselves. Because right up to today, most Africans don't see themselves as brothers and sisters. But when we'll be able to cross that barrier and begin to see ourselves as one, then automatically we are going to see ourselves as each and everyone's protector, and then that will bring more stability, because there will be no need to go for conflicts. We'll consider the other person as our brother or sister, and why should we fight against them? We'll always be able to make compromise through dialogue, through mediation, and that at the end of the day, we are the ones that are going to benefit from it, because this is going to foster economic transactions that are going to happen between all our African countries. And why not even have a United States of Africa, United Countries of Africa, that is going to bring more stability, that's going to bring more political growth, that's going to bring more economic growth for Africa. And at the end of the day, we are the ones that are going to profit from it. So what we need to change in Africa today is the way we perceive things, is the way we see ourselves. So we must see ourselves in the mindset of Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism is all about Africans seeing themselves as one, working together in solidarity and making sure that they develop that continent for the benefit of every African.
Absolutely. Like we say, like goes the slogan of For You Media Africa, is all about putting Africa first. Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Asong. To conclude with you, Hilary Tita Tabit, in your opinion, what's your closing remarks?
Oh, I believe that the future of Cameroon, the future of Africa lies in the hands of Africa. And just like doctors talked about regional integration, that until we start seeing ourselves as African, that a Nigerian will see me as an African, a Congolese will see me as an African, a Rwandan will see me as an African, and I will see them as such. Then that will be the starting point for us to think about development. We cannot keep fighting ourselves and we continue to think that we can develop. We cannot keep providing a way for intruders to step in, for rebels to come and attack our neighbors, and then we think that we want to develop. Kwame Nkrumah said that if Ghana alone obtained independence, then Ghana has not obtained independence until all the other African countries obtain independence. That means that you cannot develop as a single entity within this continent. So I really wish to contribute my voice to others who have said it before over and over again. Let us unite and form an African state that would permit us to be economically buoyant, that will permit us to have that strong bargaining power in international politics and international economic activities. As individuals, let us strive to be active as far as political issues are concerned. Wherever responsibility calls, let us answer so that at the end of the day, we will decide our future as Africans, and we will equally enjoy our future as Africans. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hilary Tita Tabit, for your insightful contribution on today's edition of the program.
Mine.
Thank you to Dr. Asong Michael for your contribution on today's edition of Talking Point.
Thanks, Madam Jigs. Thanks to For You TV and all our viewers.
Just to reiterate that you were following us on 4U Television Africa, of course, and listening to us on 4U Radio FM 96.3. While we're streaming live, we would like to acknowledge equally the presence of Mr. Engineer Elvis Mbane, who could not make it through with us through today's edition due to some network issues. Ladies and gentlemen, it's on that note that we have come to the end of today's edition of the program. We say thank you for watching. Thank you for listening and to stay in company over numerous transmissions.